focusing on using some of the newer tapered stroke features that After Effects has included, as well as just some basic things like the ability to animate a stroke on screen and the ability to use things like repeater to create some really interesting things. So I'm going to start off by showing you what our ultimate goal is going to be today. So this is the example that we're kind of shooting for as we try to complete this integrative learning. So here we go. So you can see that as that draws on screen, every single thing that you're seeing right here is actually created within After Effects. There are no Illustrator or Photoshop files coming in. There's a combination of techniques occurring right here. I've got a couple of different strokes animating on, some taper applied to those, as well as some keyframing in there. Then if you'll notice, as the flower begins to bloom up there, repeater, a couple of the little things are used up there. So hopefully you'll find this interesting and fun. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and bounce over to After Effects. I've reset my interface. Everything is looking really nice and clean right here. So let's start off by creating a new composition. So here in my project panel, I'm going to click the new composition icon down here, and I'm going to call this, if I could only type, flower. And I'm going to use my preset. Again, it's HDTV 1080 2997. It's this one right here. If you ever have a hard time finding that one, come down until you find the ones that are UHD 4K, and then just move up one, and you want to choose that one right there. Your duration for this composition should be 5 seconds. You can make your background color any color that you want. I'm just going to leave my black for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So here within our interface, the first thing we want to do is we want to create our very first leaf that we're going to use to make up the flower. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here in my composition window because I kind of want to draw the bottom of the leaf so that it goes off screen down here. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to take a look at my fill and my stroke options up here, and I'm going to turn my fill option off completely, and I'm going to set my stroke to like a nice medium green kind of color, something like that. My weight of my stroke, I'm going to go ahead and set it. I'm going to go ahead and set mine at 40. I'm probably going to come back and change that here in just a couple of minutes, but I just kind of want to show you where we're headed with this, and then you can take control over how you want each of your leaves to look, because you do have that freedom to do whatever you want with this. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to try to start off all of my leaves kind of somewhere down here in the middle. So I'm going to click one time. I'm going to put a little anchor point right there, and I'm going to drag out to create a little bit of a nice little arc. And then I'm going to come over here and put another point right there so that that will curve in hopefully a nice and pleasing way. Mine kind of looks like it's a little wonky right now. And if I wanted to change that, obviously I can just go in and I can sort of play around with the handles, and I can decide exactly how I want that curve to appear right there. So if I want to, I can go ahead and zoom back out to fit so that you guys can see what that looks like. So again, these are going to be like the leaves that are coming up around the flower. So you have the option at this point to decide how thick you want that leaf to be or how thin you want it to be. So I'm just going to set mine to about 60 right now and just see how well that will work for me. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do the kind of the legwork here that's going to allow that path to draw itself on screen. So down here in my layers area right now, that individual leaf that I just created is showing up down here as a shape layer, and it says shape layer 1. So let's go ahead and go to the trouble to go ahead and name that. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to press return, I'm going to call that leaf 1, and I'm going to press return again. I'm going to twirl that layer down, and I'm going to go over here just to the right of the word contents, and I'm going to find this little button right here that says add, and I'm going to go right there, and I'm going to choose this option here. This is called trim paths. This is a way to animate a path anytime, any way that you need to. This is a really, really cool technique to use, and you should definitely know how to do this. So I'm going to select trim paths. That does show up down here underneath. It's as if I have added sort of like a modifier to it. I'm going to twirl this down so I can see what's going on down here. The thing that you do need to understand is that start is wherever you started from, and we really don't want to draw it from where we started from to where we end. So what we're going to do is we're going to animate this value right here that says end. So my current time indicator is sitting at 0. And notice that as I work with the value right here on end, if I just click on that blue number right there and drag it to the left, you'll notice that that line just kind of compacts back down to where it started. So I'm going to set end to 0%. I'm not going to mess with start at all because that would do the opposite thing there. So I'm going to set end to 0. My current time indicator is at 0, and I'm going to click my stopwatch for end. What I'm going to end up with is each of those leaves kind of drawing themselves on at a slightly different rate of speed. But this is the only one that's going to start off right at 0. So maybe I'll move on down the timeline to about maybe like 3 seconds, something like that. And that's where I will go back and I will change the value for the property that we just animated end. I'm going to change that back to 100. So over time, that little path is just going to draw itself on screen. Pretty cool. Nothing too exciting. The big issue right now is that it doesn't really look like a leaf because it's just kind of hard end. It's got a flat end up here. Not very attractive, not very pretty. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and figure out some cool things that we can do to make that look nicer. So again, underneath leaf number 1 right here, I'm going to twirl down shape number 1, and I'm going to twirl down stroke. And you're going to go, holy moly, there's a lot of stuff underneath there. But I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. You do have a lot of things here. Let me just pause for a second. You can animate the color of this. You can make it change shades of green as it drew on. You can animate the stroke width over time. You can animate the opacity. All of those different things there you can control. You could even make this into a dotted line if you wanted to do something like that. But what we're looking for is this area down here called taper, and I'm going to twirl that down. And I've got a lot of different things going on down here. To be honest with you, it probably is a little bit scary at the very beginning, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to tell you what to plug in here, so don't worry anything about it right at this moment, but really the best thing you could do would be to just get in there and kind of play around with some of these values. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to roll right through these. I'm not going to animate any of these. I'm just going to set each one of them to a specific value. I might be doing a little overkill in some places here, but I'm going to go ahead and set start length to 100. And I'm going to set end length to 85. And you can kind of see what's going on right there as I do this. So now I've kind of tapered that stroke at the very beginning and at the very end. So things are looking kind of cool there. I'm going to set my start width to 50. Here we go. So that's going to make that one look a little bit thicker right there. I'm going to set my end width to 0. I'm going to set my start ease to 0, and I'm going to set my end ease to, I'm going to go to about 20, 21, somewhere in that neighborhood right there. So that my stroke or my leaf now is actually beginning to look more like a leaf. So as we take a look back at the beginning, because of the way that I set all of those, and again, you can keyframe any of those if you want to. I'm not going to do that right here for this lesson. But as you notice, this starts to draw and it's kind of blunt, it's kind of curved, and the further it comes up, the more pointed and the more tapered it gets until it completes that little arc right there. And what we end up with is really a quite beautiful little shape there that draws itself on screen. So I did forget one thing here. We need to bounce back up for just a second, and we need to go back to the trim paths. I forgot one thing there. I wanted to do a little bit of keyframe interpolation right there. So I'm just going to click the word end under trim paths so that both of those two keyframes are active, and I'm going to click the button that takes me into my graph editor. And I want to create a really pretty cool little movement here rather than just having it be static and just kind of consistent as it draws on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start over here on the left. I'm going to grab that little handle, pull that down to 0, and I'm going to drag that handle out pretty significantly because what I want is I want a really steep curve, and then I want a little taper down right there. So my second one over here, I'm going to grab it and pull it down to 0 as well, and maybe just back up just a touch. So if you guys remember from Introduction to Motion Graphics, we're going to start off very, very slow. We're going to speed up. It's going to be the fastest, and then it's going to quickly stop right here. So let's just take a quick look and just see how that's going to look. Very, very nice. A little bit more organic, a little bit neater looking, a little bit more interesting. So here's what we're going to do at this point. We're going to get out of the graph editor, and we've got one leaf. You certainly could draw each leaf individually and, just kind of do the same thing here, but I'm just going to tell you that from my perspective, especially for this one, it's a little bit easier if we just go ahead and duplicate this leaf and then use the tools that we have to change the structure of how the leaf looks and kind of maybe play around a little bit with some of the keyframes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this leaf command in the letter D. So now I have leaf number 2. They're sitting right on top of each other, so if you need to, you can turn the other one off for a moment. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to twirl down leaf number 2. I'm going to go under Contents. I'm going to go under Shape, and I'm going to go under Path here, and I'm going to select the path, and then I can actually see that path right there. It's a little hard to see, partially because the color that they use to show you the path is based on the color that's attached to that layer. So I'm just going to click that little color chip and make it red. There we go. Much, much better. You can see that path significantly better now. Make sure you have your selection tool active, and I'm just going to hold down the Shift key one time, and I'm going to hold down Shift and click one time right there on that handle right there, and then click on it one more time. And what that's going to do is it's going to let me select just that path right there. So now what I can do is I can use the same elements right there to create a second little nice leaf right there. And it's kind of fine if you do some stuff down there, like where you have that little bow right there. That's actually going to make it look really interesting and quite beautiful if you go ahead and take the time to do things like that. So now we have leaf number 2. We'll come back and we'll play around with the timing on the keyframes here in just a minute. We're going to go ahead and duplicate. I'm just going to duplicate. Doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to duplicate leaf number 2, Command D. And just like before, I've got to get to the point where I can actually see that little path right there. And select the path. Again, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, deselect that point, reselect it, and I'm going to move it down. I'm going to make a couple of leaves that are a little shorter and not quite as tall as these guys up here are. So maybe something kind of like that right there, a little shorter. Pull that down just a bit, just to kind of make it look nice. Give it a nice little arc. Perfectly fine to do that. Have some fun with that right there. All right, so that would be leaf number 3. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do a 4th and final leaf. So I'm going to select leaf number 3, hit Command and the letter D. Again, I got to twirl down so I can actually select that little path right there. I'm going to select it. I can see it. I'm going to hit Shift, click that point, and then just click the point. And again, I'm going to make this one kind of twirl off over here on this side. I'm going to really nice little curving arc right there. Try to make it look as nice and natural as you possibly can. Just like a real plant, they're going to be kind of different and unique. Each one's going to look slightly different. So now I have 4 leaves, and here's the neat thing that I can do. I can just, I can say maybe I want to leave leaf number 1 that color. I can just select leaf number 2. I want to make it a slightly different color so that it will stand out and pop against the others. So I can just select it. I can go up to my stroke up here. I can just click that little color right there. And then, I can make it slightly darker so it will actually stand out against the others. And now you're kind of seeing what I'm talking about there. So we'll do that for each one of them. Just make them a slightly different color. They can go lighter, they can go darker, they can do whatever you want them to do. It's totally up to you how you make those guys look. So there we go. So I now have 4 completely, totally different color leaves here. Really kind of nice. I'm going to tell you that I probably made this one a little too light because of what I want to do next. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to kind of turn that down just a little bit. Slightly different color, just so I can see it really well. All right, so let's just take a quick look at what we've got. All of these are going to do exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. They look pretty nice, but they certainly could look much nicer. So what I do want to do is I want to stagger the movement on these just a little bit. I'm going to select all 4 leaves. I'm going to tap the letter U, which will show me whatever is keyframed. And now I can play around with some of these keyframes and some of the timing here. So I'm going to leave leaf number 1 alone. I'm just going to kind of not mess with that one. For leaf number 2, I'm going to tuck that one in a bit. I'm going to pull this one in. It's totally up to you what you do here and how you go about this. Perfectly fine to do whatever you think looks good, looks right. but we just do want to have those staggered. So here's what's going to happen for me now. So you're seeing that they are coming on at slightly different rates of speed. They're actually looking pretty nice like that. Cool. Maybe this one is kind of kind of taking a little on it there. Let's see. Just don't forget you can come back and fix this. The only thing is that once we get to the very next step here, you kind of want to have these looking exactly like you want before we move on to the next step. All right. So I'm going to select all, Command A, and I'm going to throw all of those layers back up. And you're going to have to bear with me here for just a little tiny bit because we're going to get a little bit tedious here. So I'm going to select all 4 layers, just like that. On my keyboard, I'm going to duplicate all 4 layers. Before we do that, let's take a look. We've got leaf 1, 2, 3, and 4. So anything above 4 is going to be something else. We're going to use these copies. We're going to use 1 copy for each leaf to kind of almost make like a little, like the little lighter colored vein that you can see running up through the center of the leaf, something like that, just to give it a little bit more dimension. And then we're also going to play around with the keyframing on those just to make them look a little bit more interesting. So again, I've got all 4 layers selected. I'm going to press Command and the letter D. So again, don't forget our first original leaves were 1 through 4. So any number other than 1, 2, 3, or 4 is what we're going to use to create a stem. So this is, again, is a little tedious here, but I do just kind of want to show you what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in leaf number 1, I'm leaving alone. Leaf number 5, I'm going to edit that name. I'm just going to call it the vein on the leaf. So I'm going to call it vein 1. And then leaf number 2, I'm going to leave alone, the one directly above it. Again, I'm going to edit it and call it vein 2. If I could only spell 2. Leaf 3, I'm leaving alone. So this one right here is going to be 3. And then finally up here at the top, leaf number 8 is going to be 4. So again, I just duplicated each one of those. Whenever you duplicate, it actually drops them in right above the one you copied. So this is a copy of this is a copy of this, and so on and so on. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to make some changes to the way that these look. I actually do want these to look like they're that little tiny part that runs up through the center. So anything that says vein, I'm going to select it. I'm going to select all of the ones that say vein, and I'm going to come up here to my stroke. I know it just has like a little question mark box up there right now because I've got a bunch of different ones and each one has a different color stroke. I'm going to click in that little box and I'm going to choose a really, really pale light color of green up here. And then I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to dial the stroke weight way, way, way back, probably down to like somewhere around like 8 or something like that. And now you can see what we've ended up with. We've actually ended up with a duplicate of that same leaf, but just with a really pale little kind of lighter green kind of thing there in the middle. And again, if I just do a real quick little RAM preview right here, they do exactly what the other one did. They're just a different color and they're slightly thinner. That's the only thing going on right here. Pretty cool. So what we do want to do is we want to kind of make this look a little bit more interesting. So I want to be able to see all of those keyframes down there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make each one of the layers that I've named vein, I'm going to actually make it complete its drawing a little bit earlier, which means I'm going to push that keyframe to the left just a touch. So I'm just going to select everything right there, just like that. I'm going to hit the letter U. And what I can do then is I can just go in. This is vein number 1, so I'm just going to grab that keyframe and just scoot it over to the left. Here is vein number 2. I'm going to grab that keyframe and just scoot it over a little bit to the left. Here is vein number 3. I'm going to grab that keyframe and scoot it a bit over to the left. And here's vein number 4. And I'm going to do the same thing. So what this is going to do is it's going to force each of those parts to complete a little bit sooner. So they're almost going to be like racing out ahead of everything else, and they just end up looking really beautiful in the way that it kind of completes the look of each of these leaves. It's just got a beautiful, elegant look to it. So the last thing that I'm going to say is that if there's anything else you want to do here real quickly, you're welcome to do that. One of the things that I did do on mine just a touch was, I kind of went in and played around with a little bit more of the stroke weight in there. So like maybe for like leaf number 4, I did kind of putz around with the stroke weight just a little bit more on it, just to kind of vary it. And if you want to do that with any of those guys, you're welcome to do that. Just kind of thicken some of those leaves up just a little bit. Don't go crazy with it. Just some variation so that they're not all exactly the same stroke weight. And I'm going to do the same thing for leaf number 2. Here we go. Just so that there's a little bit of variation in there. I'm going to take another quick look. It's just so freaking cool. I love this. I absolutely love some of these new features that After Effects has included. All right, so let's do this real quick. Let's go ahead and do a little quick save. I'm going to go File. I'm going to go Save As. I'd encourage you to put yours into your Integrative Learning folder. I'm just going to drop mine on my desktop. I'm going to call this Animated Flower. All right, so everything is there. I've got everything going pretty well exactly the way that I want it to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to create one additional, I'm going to start off by duplicating a leaf. I'm going to create one more, and this one is going to be the stalk. This is going to be the one that is going to go up to the top, and my little flower is going to kind of actually bloom right on top of that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to grab leaf number 2, and I'm going to duplicate it one more time, Command and the letter D. I am going to drag it down. I'm going to put it just above vein number 1, leaf number 1, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it Stalk. I want to reshape this as well, just like I did the others, but this time I'm going to do a couple of things here to it, just so that it will look a little bit more the way that I want it to for this process here. So again, I want this to be a little bit more vertical, a little bit straighter, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key, click one of those points, just kind of scoot it over and just kind of straighten it up. It can curve a little bit. In fact, it would look kind of weird if it didn't curve, just a touch. Something like that. You're definitely at a place here where you might want to go in and just kind of play around a little bit with some of the other things that are going on there, with some of the taper, and just kind of, maybe mess around with that a little bit so it isn't quite so sharp at the very end. We can just kind of thicken that end up there just a little bit. Yeah, so just kind of want something a little bit thicker up there. The other thing we probably want to do is we definitely want to make this one stand out. We wanted a different color, so I'm going to click my stroke, and I'm going to go down and choose a little bit of a darker, kind of like a grayish green, something like that, just so it will pop and it will stand out. The other thing that I want to do with that one is I'm going to hit the letter, I've got that layer selected, I'm going to hit the letter U. I just want to make sure that it completes drawing on by about 2 seconds and 15 frames, and I really don't want it to have the exact same keyframes that it did with the other one. So I'm either going to make it happen much, much faster, or I could make it happen much slower. You pick whichever one you want to do. I'm going to let it start a little bit later so that when that stalk draws on, it's going to happen relatively quickly. It's going to pop up just like that. So there is my stalk. Let's just take a quick RAM preview here and just see how things are looking. Yeah, things are looking pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the bloom on the flower. It doesn't really matter where your current time indicator is. You probably want it to be down a little bit just so that you can see that path as it finishes, because as we draw the part that's going to be the flower, we do need to line it up with wherever the top of the stalk part is. I didn't put a highlight on the stalk just because I kind of figured it would be more round and it wouldn't have that little kind of vein running up through the center of it. That's why I did that. So again, I'm going to go back and grab my pen tool. I'm going to set my fill color to a nice bright white color, and I'm going to set my stroke to none. And I'm just looking right here at the top of that stalk, and maybe I'll even zoom in a little bit so you can see better. I'm just going to put one point right there. I'm going to move up directly above it. This is going to be one flower petal. So I've got to figure out how big I want that petal to be. I'm going to hold out my Shift key because that's going to lock it to be directly above it. And I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag to the right. I'm going to form like half of the petal. And now when I go back down and click the original point, I'll actually close that shape in and we'll make a nice little petal for me right there. Now, why that didn't, there we go. I just click off of the tool to get it to finish. Sometimes this is so stupid. I'm going to click back on my selection tool right there. So here's my petal. For some weird reason, because of the way that I drew this, my anchor point ended up being way over here to the left. So I do want to do one thing. I want to grab my anchor point pan behind tool, and I want to grab that anchor point down. I want to put it right down there at the tip where the petal actually occurs. That's what I want to do right there. All right, so now's your opportunity. If you need to reposition it or anything, you kind of want it to be just right where that little stalk ends right there. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to name this. We're going to call it Petal. I'm going to move it down in my layers. I need to put it just above the word Stalk so that everything is kind of together where they need to be. And we're going to have some fun with repeater. So I'm going to twirl that flower petal down, and I'm going to come over here to the right to the switch where it says add, and I'm going to choose repeater. Now repeater will duplicate whatever you have created. This is only going to work on vectors that are created within After Effects. But it's a really cool technique. This one is going to take us a little bit of kind of finagling with it to make it look exactly like we want. But I'm here to help you out. It's going to be all right. So here it is. Here's my petal. Down here's repeater. I've got to twirl that down. It defaults to 3. I'm going to change that to 20 to 0. It always pushes them over to the right until I come down and I twirl down transform repeater. They're all getting pushed to the right because of this value right here. The position value right here. So we're going to set this to 0 right there, and then that's going to pile all 20 of those up right on top of each other. So there's 20 of them. They're sitting all right there on top of each other, and that is perfectly fine. No worries whatsoever. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to kind of rotate these out. So what I can do is I can come down here to my rotation property, and I can just grab that little second number right there, and I can just click and I can drag it to the right. And they're going to spin around. I'm going to set that to about, I'm going to go to about 20, I think. No, I'm going to go to 18 right there. So this did something really kind of cool, but it also did something kind of bizarre. And that is it kind of spread them out pretty significantly away from the center where I really wanted them to be. So what I can do is I can kind of play around with my anchor point up here. You know, I can just kind of grab this and drag that in until I get those tightened back up exactly the way that I want them to be and kind of positioned where I want them to be up there. You know, if you need to, don't hesitate. You can zoom in really close up there and just kind of look and see where things are and just kind of make sure that everything is exactly where you want it to be. It probably could have, you know, made that process just a little bit easier if I had maybe just put that petal right in the center of my screen, but I didn't do that. So we're just going to keep going. So again, I'm going to grab this up here and I'm just going to position it so that that little opening right there is near the center. So pretty simple and pretty straightforward right at this moment. So a couple other things we want to do. We want to kind of figure out at what point we want the flower to be completely open. And that's going to be determined by the stalk. So I've got the stalk selected down here. I'm going to hit the letter U on my keyboard so that I can see that. So I want the flower to really not start drawing itself on until about just maybe before the stalk finishes drawing. So when the flower looks like this, that's actually going to be down the timeline. So I'm going to kind of animate in reverse here just a little bit. I'm going to grab my current time indicator. I'm going to move down to the 4-second 15 frame mark. And I am going to keyframe the transform repeater, the rotation down here. I'm going to keyframe that. I'm going to click the stopwatch. I'm going to back up to just before this keyframe down here. Hopefully you can see that for where the stalk is completing its little journey. I'm going to back up to about right here. And then I'm going to set that rotation value back to 0. And then let's take a quick look and let's see what that's going to be like. Ah, there we go. It's going to fan out and spin around exactly like we want it to, just like that. So, so yeah, things are looking pretty cool there. We got a couple other things that we want to do just to make things look a little bit nicer. I am going to keyframe a couple of other values right there. I'm going to keyframe my start and my end opacity. I'm going to kind of work in reverse here. So my current time indicator is down here at 4:15. I'm going to go ahead and click the stopwatch for start and end opacity. And for my end opacity, I'm just going to make it look nice. I really kind of want to be able to see through these just a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of dial these numbers back just a touch here until I can kind of see how things look, and just kind of make a call on how I want these to look, something like that. I'm going to back up to 0 right here. And again, I'm probably going to dial those numbers down even further just to make them look a little bit more interesting. And then let's just kind of do like a little quick scrub through right here and just kind of see how beautiful that is. It just looks so cool as that fans out and opens up just like it's supposed to. I do want to go ahead and do a little bit of keyframe interpolation here. Obviously, it's going to look a lot nicer if you do the graph editor. So I'm just going to select all those keyframes right there. I'm going to click graph editor. This does tend to look like a little bit of a mess right here, but I can just grab those and scoot them over. I want to grab each of these individually because I do want them to start off at 0. I have them all selected there at the beginning. A little weird. Again, I want to be in control of how this looks. You can make it look as nice as you would like. So here we go. Zoom, there we are. And that's going to open up just like that. So pretty awesome. We're kind of headed in the right direction here. I'm going to unclick my graph editor right there. I'm going to zoom all this back out so that you can see everything. And let's just take a quick look and take a quick inventory and see if we like how things are looking. We got one more thing to do with the flower petal up there because we don't want to see it there as it starts out. But so far, so good. Things are looking really nice, and we're ending up with a very, very beautiful little animation right here. So let's go back to the petal one last time, and I'm going to just animate my original strat property. I'm not going to get into the repeater properties. I just want to animate my original strat property. So with the petal selected, I'm going to hit the letter U just so that I can see all the other keyframes right there. And I'm also going to reveal my scale. So if you hit Shift and S, that will also add your scale down here so that you can see that one as well. So I'm going to start just a little bit before that. I'm going to start at the 2-second mark, and I'm going to stopwatch, keyframe my scale down to 0. And I'm going to move over here somewhere maybe like in the middle, halfway between these two over here, and I'm going to put my scale back to 100. And I might come back and just decide I want to do this a little bit differently or something like that, but I can just kind of like take a look at that and see how that works out. Which looks really pretty nice right there. So I'm going to ease out on that one right there. I'm going to ease in on that one right there, just to make it look as nice as I possibly can. Beautiful, beautiful. So my flower's animating on screen. Everything is looking nice. I've just got one last little thing I need to do. I need a little center for my flower right there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make sure I've got nothing selected. I'm going to go grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to set my fill color to a nice, beautiful, kind of like a nice goldish orange color, like you would see in the middle of like a daisy or something like that. And if you need to zoom in, you're welcome to do that. I'm just going to zoom in up here a little bit so you can see what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to click. I'm going to hold down my Command and my Shift key once I click and start drawing until I get my nice little center right there. And then I'm just going to kind of move it into position. This is going to be my flower center, so instead of shape layer right here, I'm going to go ahead and rename that flower center. And don't forget the rest of the parts of my flower down here, so I'm going to put it just above my petal. So I've got the stalk, the petal, flower center, all right there together. My petals, again, I kind of need to see where things are occurring down here with the keyframes that I already have, because I'm just going to do a little scale on the flower center. So I'm going to select it so I can see my scale properties. I'm going to go to maybe somewhere around here, kind of halfway between those keyframes right there. I'm going to click the stopwatch. And I'm going to back up to where they just start, about right there. And that's where I'm going to drop the scale down to 0. Oops. 0 right there. And again, I could ease out right there. Keyframe system, ease out. just kind of take a look and see if we're happy with the way that things look. Let's set this back to fit. I'm going to make that photo screen there. I'm going to start back to the beginning, and let's take a quick look here and see. So my leaves animate in a beautiful, elegant way, and my flower animates in. It's going to be just like that. There's certainly lots and lots of different things that you could do. You could get in there and play around with repeater. You can also mess around with the scale on the leaves within repeater, and then they'll also do this kind of cool little cascading thing right there. It's really pretty unlimited what you can do. Let me just show you that real quickly. So here we back are on my petal layer. I'm going to twirl that down, and then down here under transform repeater, I could have also put in a scale transform right there. And then as I back up here to the beginning, if I drop that scale down pretty significantly, then what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with this kind of almost like cascading effect of my blooms doing like that. I forgot about that part. But yeah, it's totally up to you how you go about this. You can make it kind of happen any way that you want to. Let's get back to about 50 right there. Again, I'm going to ease out. Everything looks better with some keyframe interpolation on it. Easy uses the easy way out. Take your time, do it right. There we go. So we're going to see how that's going to change things, and the flower is going to animate on it. Uh-oh, I do something up there. I goofed something up. Yeah, I didn't set that back too long. There we go. Sorry about that. Yep, there we go. All right, yep, that was my fault. But beautiful little cascade up there. So last thing, if you wanted to, you certainly could go in and put a nice little background here in our scene. I'm going to go layer, new, solid, and I'm just going to put a really nice little pale blue background in there. I'm going to call it background. Click OK. I'm going to drag it all the way down to the bottom. And I really don't want it to just be that flat blue, the whole area, so I'm going to zoom out just a bit. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and with the background layer selected, I'm just going to come up here a little bit outside the box, and I'm going to come down and draw a little mask onto that layer, just like that. I'm going to twirl down the mask right there, and I'm going to find mask feather, and I'm just going to increase it until I end up with a really nice little gradient where the blue just kind of trails off right there. Definitely kind of makes things look just a little bit nicer, a little bit more finished and complete to do that. So there we are. And you guys have done an amazing job of creating this beautiful little animated flower. This is just one thing that you can do. You can do a million different things with repeater and with the ability to animate strokes and taper and all that kind of cool stuff.